And he decided he was going to prove it. And so he was going to use his daughter. And he decided he was going to expose her to just mathematics and chess. And his yardstick for his experiment is that his daughter would be one of the best chess players in the world. So he created the environment. And his thinking was, look, Mozart was a great musician, but he grew up in a music environment. And his philosophy was that if we create the right environment, we can change the results. So that's what he did. Now, guess what? His first daughter became a chess grandmaster at the age of 14. His second daughter repeated the same thing. His third daughter is today considered to be one of the best chess players in the world. So when I, read things like that, I am a firm believer that anybody can become a genius. I run one-on-one leadership programs called Reimagine Yourself, where I've had CEOs from all over the world, literally, and we get the same results. So what I do with them is what I'm going to attempt to do with you right now. Now, innovation is who you are. Just giving directives for people to be innovative has never made anyone innovative. But anyone can learn how to be. An old adage says, necessity is the mother of invention. So under the right conditions, anybody can be innovative. And one of the conditions that is required is, number one, relevant knowledge. Relevant knowledge. Potential will remain as potential until the force of relevant knowledge is applied. Knowledge that is not relevant does not make a difference. Real progress begins when we as individuals begin to challenge our own assumptions. When we challenge our assumptions and we become career learners, that means we are learners for life. The day learning stops, the decay of the mind begins. Now, one of the great paradoxes of life is that the intelligent are not always relevant, and the relevant are not always intelligent. The intelligent are not always relevant, and the relevant are not always intelligent. What is this thing that helps us? It's the fact that you cannot be innovative with a fixed mindset. That's why you need to be able to challenge your assumptions. The fact that I believed something and it worked yesterday is no guarantee that it will work today. Permit me to go into the scripture. God told Moses, hit the rock, water will come out. Moses hit the rock, and water came out. Then it was a new season. This time God told Moses, speak to the rock, water will come out. I can imagine what is going on in the head of Moses. Abba, Oga, last time we hit the rock now. Why are you changing? We hit the rock. In fact, if Moses was a Nigerian, he would have started Rock Hitting Ministry International. So guess what? Moses could not make the transition in his mind. his fixed mindset cost him the promised land. Do you know how many people are being robbed of their own promised land and destinies because of a fixed mindset? So listen, you must always, and let me tell you this, if you get this, you have everything. That there is a remote possibility, just a remote possibility, that you might be wrong. Am I communicating? If you can embrace that there is a remote possibility that I might be wrong, what does that do? It helps you to challenge your assumptions, and it helps you to grow. And of course, those who learn nothing never change their minds. Because you are changing your mind because you have learned something new. Every entity is a reflection of the mindsets of its leaders over time. And societies where intelligence and relevance meet, whenever you have a society where intelligence and relevance meet, they become the most progressive societies. Like I said, over the years, I've done a lot of research on leadership thinking and relevance, and I captured it in a book titled Beyond Intelligence. This is my 18th book, Beyond Intelligence, the Simple Practice of Staying Relevant. So I'm going to share a few thoughts from there, and you can get the book in the bookstand out there. There is nothing like once intelligent, always intelligent. Debunk that. There is nothing like once intelligent, always intelligent. My father was a medical doctor, one of the best, well, at least when he died, that's what everybody said, And I always said to him, I said, Dad, if you are practicing medicine in the 20, he died in 2017. I said, if you're practicing medicine, say in 2015, using only what you learned in medical school in 1966, I said, verily, verily, thou shalt be a serial killer. Because everything has changed. Now, so what makes him to continue to stay relevant is not that he was intelligent. So you need to debunk that. The process of continuing improvement, which they call Kaizen, was never meant to be a Japanese thing. It's a human thing. Because that is how you become relevant. Those who do not move will never notice their change. So my challenge is this. While we were learning that Mungo Park discovered the River Niger, in other parts of the world, they were buying cameras, stripping them apart, looking at what makes it work. They were buying transistor radios. What makes it work? They were stripping things apart. So listen, learning, we must move from learning to learn and now move to learning to change. That is, we move from being consumers to processors. The same thing that happens with our raw materials is what is happening with information. We don't know how to process our raw materials, so we will harvest the raw materials and export. Then those who know how to process it now sell back to us at many times the price. So learning to advance the lot of humanity, I believe is the noblest cause for learning. I'll give you some examples. A company called Thomas Cook, it was in the news a few years ago, they collapsed. The biggest travel company in the world. Why did they collapse? Their failure was a failure of relevant knowledge. They were hiring attendants to put in their shops. In London, in the UK alone, they had 560 shops. Now, come on. How many people in Kenya today go to town, go to a travel shop to buy a ticket for your holiday? Nobody does that anymore. So instead of these guys hiring coders to beef up their online business, what were they doing? They were hiring shop attendants to man their shops. They collapsed. It was a collapse based it's triggered by a lack of relevant knowledge. Companies do not fail because they lack intelligence. They fail for lack of relevant knowledge. Nations do not fail for lack of intelligence or resources. It's the lack of relevant knowledge. So, how do we ensure that we stay relevant? Because leadership that is not relevant is not leadership. Isn't it interesting? Everybody clapped and rejoiced when Mugabe became president of Zimbabwe. Guess what? When he was removed, people clapped and rejoiced. Somewhere along there, relevance had been lost. Somewhere along there. So, it's not, knowledge is not, we've all heard that knowledge is power. But knowledge is not power unless it can be applied in a way that solves real problems. I love reading. I'm on my 25th book of the year. I love reading. But it's not in how many books that I read. It is in how much of what you read you can apply to make a difference in your world. That is leadership. In 1918, I'm sure you all know that there was a pandemic called the Spanish flu. And 500 million people were infected globally. There were about 50 million deaths. And it went on till 1920. And this is where it gets interesting. What came after the pandemic? Historians will tell you the 20s were called the Roaring 20s. That is what followed the pandemic. The Roaring 20s. Innovation was going at breakneck speed. Let me give you some innovations of the 20s. When you drive your car and there's a headrest, that is an innovation of the 1920s. Traffic lights is an innovation of the 20s. Water skiing is an innovation of the 20s. The bulldozer, the instant camera, cheeseburger, of course, penicillin, quick frozen food, the electric blender, listen, the vacuum cleaner, and the television were innovations of the post-pandemic era of the Roaring 20s. History is about to repeat itself, and only those who are ready will profit from it. Because a crisis is too good an opportunity to waste. Great leaders emerge from great crises. So in the post-COVID world, Society is going to, innovation in society is going to surge again. All right? Now, are you ready? Or are you just going to be a spectator? What are you innovating internally? That means, what are you learning? Are you just learning to learn? So you can say, I have attended a conference, or I have read X number of books. Let me tell you how I read. I read a chapter, I close it, I try to remember everything I can in that chapter, then I write my action points. Because I have to process. If I don't process the information I have, it will not benefit me or anybody. So I process that information. Innovation is going to it's going to escalate in a post-COVID era. Do not say you are not told, though. And this is not a blind prophecy. We're looking at facts from history. So whoever is rightly positioned, that means I am learning to apply. I am learning to make a difference, not just to say I have learned. In May 2019, a Harvard Business Review article was titled, R&D spending has dramatically surpassed advertising spending. Listen, research and development spending has surpassed advertising. Now, before, most organizations, the bulk of their spending was in advertising. But now, a new trend that companies, listen, they were spending more than 10% of their revenue on research and development and less than 1% on advertising. Why? Because I know we say it casually, research and development, but if you are going to be an innovator, you must be a researcher. And research and development go hand in hand. So this is going beyond I'm just reading. This is I am researching so that I can know, so that I can apply and make a difference. I'm going to read something to you from this book that I think you would really find interesting. All right. It was just looking at different nations around the world and their number of researchers per 1 million inhabitants. This will interest you. Israel has the highest number of researchers per 1 million inhabitants in the world, with about 8,250 per million inhabitants. These are 2020 figures, 2019 to 2020, all right? 8,250 researchers per million inhabitants. The US, 4,217 researchers for every 1 million inhabitants. Japan has 5,328. South Korea, 6,856. Now, you see that we are in the range of the thousands, isn't it? So let's come to Africa. South Africa has 432 researchers per 1 million inhabitants. Kenya has done quite well. When you hear what is going to come after Kenya, Kenya, 225 researchers per 1 million inhabitants. Nigeria. Now, I know the argument Nigerians like this, my Oga here, would tell me is that, oh, we have a big population. United States has big population too now. And the US, 4,217. Nigeria has 38 researchers per 1 million inhabitants. Listen, now again, when you look at companies, the budget for research, for companies, you'll be very, very upset that these companies are spending more. Listen, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, spent $16.2 billion in research in a year. And the list goes on. I think the smallest I have here is Sanofi in France with $6.6 billion. But isn't it interesting that the highest level of research has birthed the highest level of development? So when we say research and development, let's look at it as just to, no. Research fuels development at a personal level, at an organizational level, and even at a national level. Research fuels development. Now, I understand, and let me be an apologist for the African. And listen, when we were growing up, we were never encouraged to ask questions. In fact, when the adults are talking, I remember, again, the Bible, Jesus was 12 years old with the doctors and the lawyers, and he was sitting down and they were having conversation. Where I come from, a 12-year-old will not sit down in that place. They will tell you, how many of your mates can you find here? Come on, get out. You understand what I'm saying? We have to change that. We have to change that. So, but if we do not research, we will live in a world created by those who do. If we don't research, we will continue to benchmark those who do. Now, let me tell you about, I wrote a book years ago called Mental Independence, the ability to think without precedent. Now, you find out that a lot of people, and I think this is part of the challenge we have had as a continent, we want to benchmark everything. We want to benchmark how people play football. We want to benchmark how people sleep on their beds. We want to benchmark how they make babies. I mean, we want to benchmark everything. But when the London Underground was developed in 1863 as the first of its kind in the world, who were they benchmarking? When in 1811 the master plan for Manhattan was developed, a master plan with roads when people were riding horses, who were they benchmarking? When the pyramids were being erected in Egypt and for 3,800 years became the tallest man-made structures on earth, 3,800 years, who were they benchmarking? You will never, as a leader, have the boldness to benchmark your imagination if you have not researched. These are people who are able to benchmark their imagination, and in so doing, they took their societies forward. They took humanity forward. The boldness, the guts to be able to benchmark imagination comes only from solid research, that you have your facts there. So let me end by saying, many people have had great opportunities, but they discarded their opportunities as threats because they did not have the relevant knowledge, and they were looking for who has done it before. They couldn't benchmark their own imagination. There will be no end to conferences. There will be no end to workshops, but it takes relevant knowledge, a product of research, to be able to take the future. The future belongs to the researchers. The founding father of the modern nation of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, he said, as Israel's first prime minister, listen to what he said: all experts are experts on what was. There is no expert on what will be. To become an expert on the future, vision must replace experience. Thank you very much indeed.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Dr. Wale. I think we are now on our way to transformation, and we should be alive that history is repeating itself, and let's benchmark our imaginations. Now, I would request quickly, in the interest of time, to get the panelists who are going to take us through this session to come on stage. I would request the Honorable Dr. Engineer Festus Ngeno join me on stage. Would also request the other gentleman to join me on stage so that I'll see your face, I'll recognize. Please, the ones who are supposed to come, like Mr. Emmanuel Wako. If you are asked to come, please just come on stage. Dr. Mdondo? Yeah. The others may join us virtually, but in the meantime, I'll make an introduction to the gentlemen who are on stage. With us here, we have the Honorable Dr. Engineer Ngeno, who is a WASH and climate change expert for the last 15 years. He is also the County Executive Committee member in charge of water, sanitation, environment, energy, and climate change at the county government of Nakuru, our hosts. He is also the chair Council of Governors, the Committee of Water, Sanitation, Environment and Forestry, Climate Change and Mining, the CC Caucus of the Council of Governors. He is the Board of Directors and the Vice Chair of the World Vision Kenya, a Board Director in the Vision Fund, a Governing Board Member at the 2030 Water Resource Group, a Board Director at the Nakuru Water and Sanitation Services Company, and that is NAWASCO, and also at Nakuru Rural Water and Sanitation Company, among others. Let's put our hands together for Daktari. Karibu. With us also we have Mr. Emmanuel Oko. Mr. Emmanuel Oko leads the WASP's research and policy program that is, which aims at building evidence that can be used to influence policy in urban sanitation in Kenya. He has a background in population and development studies. Emmanuel has also previously managed multi-sectoral programs. He has managed multi-sectoral programs that deliver services to the most vulnerable, and he's also coordinated consortium programs focusing on capacity building at the urban authorities and government ministries to provide quality and timely services. Emmanuel has also extensive experience in project design, management, and evaluation. Let's put our hands together for the gentleman. As much as I know Dr. Engineer Simon Mudondo, I don't have his bio here, but when I'll give him an opportunity to speak, I think he will say something. My apologies, Daktari. But all the same, let's welcome him. We also have Mr. Vincent Ouma of COASNET. Again, he will help me introduce himself when I give him the opportunity to speak. So let's give him a round of applause. So now our first speaker in this panelist will be Mr. Owako. So, Mr. Owako, from your institution, which you will certainly tell us, speaking innovation, what are the innovations, technologies, market opportunities for youth and women in the water and sanitation sector? Please talk to us for about 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwedo. I'm Emmanuel Owako, not Owako. I work as a country programs coordinator for water and sanitation for the urban poor, but again, leading the policy and research component. So for us, from the institutional perspective, we just as a reference to what our keynote speaker mentioned in the morning, we believe in building evidence through research, and we undertake immense urban research initiatives to be able to build evidence for innovations that enable testing of models. When you test models, when you pilot the models, then you create what works for the sector. And this research, we focus on the urban sanitation research along the value chain, sanitation value chain, and also in the water component. And particularly for the aspect of the gender equality under the SDG 5, we've undertaken a number of research focusing on the gender perspectives, particularly the responsibility that our ladies have or women have in the institutional frameworks. So we challenge ourselves to be able to get models that work, not models that are, but of course, when you pilot, you also have failures, and what fail also drive the next initiative to research more. And this, within the aspect of youth and women involvement, we look at, we work closely with the research institutions and also the mandated institutions to create enabling environment. Just as Dr. mentioned, we do policies and we also frame a lot of legal, we do a lot of legal frameworks. But the initiative to take them forward in terms of testing what works and what might not work is always an energy that we lack in the sector. So that, as WASPA, we drive passionately. We seek perspectives from different stakeholders, the mandated ones, the research institutions, the tech companies that also have the mandate. So we also believe in integrated approaches and partnerships, because research and development, there is need for collaboration, because in the water sector, for example, water and sanitation sector, the tech companies are there to help us also innovate and drive the initiatives forward. And as such, we collaborate effectively with some of these tech companies, both in terms of driving the research on digitalization, but also ensuring those piloting of the models are done and shared and disseminated in the sector. So that's what I can say, that as WASPA, we believe in the reflections that is informed by research, learnings, and also transformative shifts that are brought by the evidence generated through that research. And that we've done on aspects that bring forth the participation of youth and women in terms of business incubation and also private sector involvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep noting your comments, your questions, your compliments, all the way from Dr. Wale. And now we will listen to Dr. Engineer Festus Ngeno, who, as I said, is the chair of the CCC caucus in the water, forestry and mining committees. From where you sit, Dr. in that institution of yours, in a similar vein, what are the innovations, technologies, and market opportunities for youth and women in the water and sanitation space?
Thank you so much, Jack. First is to appreciate the conversation from Dr. Wale. I think it was inspiring. And I want to say I've learned a lot about the continuous improvement and the relevance in our realms of operation and our space. And I think also that is tying up to what the CS mentioned to us yesterday, especially to the youth and women, that you need to wake up and take up your space, and you fight within the space that you've been put. In the respect to the question you've asked me, Dr. Especially in terms of innovation, I think my perspective from where I sit, especially from the Council of Governors perspective and also my role as a CC, and I did mention yesterday, and I'm looking forward to the structured way of mentorship and internship for the youths. That's one. And as the youth come on board, and also the women's space, and particularly as Emmanuel was speaking, there is an untapped opportunity in sanitation. when you look at the role of women and in water provision and the role of youth in the same space, there's a lot that has never been established. For those of us who have been in the sector for long, and I think you mentioned to us, Daktari Wale, that we keep on reinventing, not really reinventing, using the same old technology, whatever we are. Using the same technology on whatever we've been working on for a very long time. I think it's time for us to go tech savvy, and I'm happy with what Jeremy mentioned yesterday. So I would want to focus and say to the youth and the women that, especially in the space of sanitation, there's a lot that could be worked on. One of the key things that I find it, and I've worked with quite a number of young people, is the process of growing up. In terms of your career, in terms of your opportunities that come within. I think for us who have gone before you, one of the key things that I usually like saying is that we create space. We give you information on how you can be able to tap in and even align you to the respective career path that comes your way. You are very fortunate that you're even sitting in this conference and learning from quite a number of us who have been there in the space of experience. So looking at the innovation, one of the key things, and I want to insist, and I'm happy WASPA here, and even the team that we work together in the water sector, is the issue of innovativeness within not even the water sector per se, but the sanitation aspect. That you can be able to make money, you can be able to improve yourself in terms of your life by just focusing on an innovative solution, and especially that has been maybe developed, but for you coming to improve. Yesterday when we were going around, 10 years ago, and I was discussing with the chairman of WASPA in the morning when I was running the utility. No, the issue of having a remote sense meters was far remote. But right now, I don't think there is any utility that doesn't discuss about use of remote sense meters and even having an ERP system, which I'm happy that the youth has been very forthright and being in that space in terms of making sure that you have an ERP that can be able to pick up data. Secondly, 10 years, 5 years ago, we used to use UPVC pipes. And as mentioned yesterday, in terms of what the youth could do in terms of excavation and laying of pipes, nowadays people are moved to high-tech solutions. Like I can tell you 5, 7 years ago, no one talked about ADP piping in terms of reduction of non-revenue. So that the issue is we're moving, we're talking about management. So I would urge the youth and the women to tap onto that space and be able to become rejig their thinking in how they pursue or look at the water and sanitation space and what they can be able to bring in as a solution. Now we have even moved, and I'm happy that even on the rural space, that we are looking at the rural sanitation, and especially from the public health perspective. You remember public health has been really very strong in rural sanitation, but that has become now a responsibility that lies within the water and sanitation service providers. But now, what the issue is, have they been able to get to that space? Why can you be able to just focus and see what you can be able to provide that solution from there and connect it to the utility that is running within that particular space? So that's what I'm encouraging the youth, and of course mentorship and the program that needs to be well structured for them to be able to develop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we make progress, now let's hear from KEWASNEP. KEWASNEP as an institution. What are the same innovations? What are the innovations, the technologies, the markets and opportunities for youth and women in the water and sanitation, sector?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hari. As you had earlier said, my name is Vincent Oma, and I'm the head of programs at WASPA, Kenya Water and Sanitation Civil Society Network. So as I go through my 4 minutes, I would just like to start by saying that I was very pleasantly surprised this morning to meet Dr. Wale. I am a member of one of his clubs in Nairobi called Club Intelligentsia. And actually, what made me to join this club, I read one of his books called Mental Independence. And one thing I got is that what got you where you are today will not get you to where you want to be tomorrow. And that spurred my thinking a lot, and I went to the club, and the rest has been history. Now, at WASPA, there are a number of things, so there are a number of innovations that we are doing. I'll just share one, is that of late, we've embarked in mobilizing the youth to take part in water and sanitation. And this is a drive that we have started happening in Busia, in Kakamega, Kajiado, and many other places. It has just started, so it's a journey that we are going to be on for quite some time, because we realized that the youth were not being very deeply involved in water issues. And so that is happening. You heard of the Youth Parliament being mentioned, so there will be a session on that. And those are some of the activities that we have been doing at KWASNet. So some of the opportunities for youth in water and sanitation, actually, very quickly, I'll share two, which have been part of my journey as I've been in the sector for quite some time in water and sanitation. So one is on sanitation, and the other one will be on water. So as part of my journey, when we were doing some work in Busia, and for those of you from here who come from Busia, I'll refer you to a village in Busia called Munongo village. If you go there, you'll be able to see what I'll be talking about. We came up with an innovation that had not been tested before in that particular area. And this was the so-called Makiga bricks, the soil stabilized interlocking bricks. What we wanted to do is to put up a sanitation facility that was modified but was less costly, so that whoever wanted to afford would still have what we call an improved sanitation facility, but at the same time do this at a very minimized cost. So we embarked on some little research within the county. We looked around, and there was no Makiga pressing machine in the county. So we went ahead and purchased one. And the approach we took is that we trained artisans, because we had not done that before, but we did modeling and trained a number of artisans to develop, and then we came up with designs. Actually, we drew designs for the toilets attached to the bathroom and a few other things that could make the toilet cheaper, looking nice, but also very appealing to whoever wants to use. So we put up those facilities using the Makiga. At first, it was a bit difficult to convince people that you could use Makiga bricks to put up a sanitation facility. So when it worked, we were able to bring youths together, a number of youths, just to start training them on how to put up sanitation facilities using these Makiga bricks. And then the whole thing became like just a fire within Busia, because it became a business model where we do the demand creation within the community, and then we have these trained youths that we could put together. They go and put up, they help the families to put up the sanitation facilities. And today, if you go to Busia, I saw, the other day I visited, there's some people who have picked up this, and they're using now the Makiga bricks even to do their fence, and some of them they're using to do the houses, at least, because of this thing that we started very many years ago. So this is a big opportunity for the youth, because the model of the sanitation facility that we designed, we left, or we put in provision for exhaustion, because it's not been so many years, so that when the manure has been treated well enough, it can be used, in the farm. So that will be the next phase. And for those that are interested, the youth, the women, everybody that is here, is something that you can pick up moving forward. The second opportunity that I will talk about is one of our youth groups that we work with in Kisii. They're called Esango Youth Group. So this particular model or the innovation that they have put in place, I hope they are in the house, is both water resources management, and also on the other side is water services provision, because I said I'll give to sanitation and water. So the innovation here is that there was this piece of land that was being degraded by the community, grazing and all that. This particular youth group, led by Samson Mayaka, they purchased this piece of land, and they decided to start planting trees, specific kinds of trees. When they did the first test for the water was very turbid and not of good quality. Then they started planting trees, just, bringing back the environment, restoring the environment. Then they went ahead and put up a water harvesting plant just near the source. And then up, they put up a water treatment plant. And today, as we speak, they're in the house, they're actually selling very clean and safe water for drinking from that particular source. Very clean water. The water now, it was turbid, it had many components. Now it has cleared because of the processes that they put in place to restore the environment. And this is all youth-led, and they're making money out of it. So it's a business model. They're protecting the environment, and they're serving the community. And these are very many opportunities that all of us, the youths, the women, and everybody can be involved. So I think I want to stop there because of time, but thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
Lastly but not least, Dr. Engineer Simon Mudondo, representing the universities. From your point of view, what are the innovations, technologies, markets, opportunities for youth and women in the water and sanitation sector?
Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Gwetha. From where I sit as a university lecturer, a researcher, and a consultant, there are quite a number of technologies, and of course, they provide market opportunities for the youth and the women that I'll want to share with you. As a university, before any technology is introduced to the market, there must be a number of questions that must be answered. And this is where the university comes about. In research, you don't just assume. You question and test and use the data that you get from the test to be able to confirm. And that's what we are doing. In the area of sanitation, in particular, because that's the area that I've done quite a number of research and a number of consultancy, there's this interesting area of waste to energy nexus, where resources are recovered from waste. And looking at the sanitation problem, the sanitation problem revolves much around the organic wastes. As the previous presenters and the discussions, it revolves around the organic waste, how to deal with this, because that is what is disturbing us here. When we talk of sanitation, quite a number of us understand it as maybe fecal sludge or sewage sludge. If you talk about sewage sludge, they know you are touching an issue of sanitation. But it goes beyond that. Then the question will be, what is the origin of all these challenges? How are we managing these wastes? How are we managing our organic waste? Then we have to identify, is it fecal sludge? Is it industrial organic waste? Is it agricultural bioresidue? Or what is it that we are trying to deal with? And what is it that is what is it that is causing the sanitation problem? So that's where the university comes in. Then we question, what is this problem that we are talking about? It's not about fecal sludge, because somehow we must have some fecal sludge. And I want to echo what Dr. Wale alluded to. The technologies that we are using today are based on some findings that were discovered so many years ago. But these findings must be improved. I'm sure the traffic science that we are using today and how it is controlled, it's based on the previous concept, but it has been improved. And improvement is basically what we are looking at as innovation. So when we are talking of disposal, for example, of fecal sludge, it is the same fecal sludge and it's the same septic tank that we were using before. But what modifications are we making to make probably the septic tank to be able to accommodate a high load or a high organic load compared to the septic tank that was innovated so many years ago? So that continuous improvement is the task of the university, because the university professor will prophesize. What is prophesizing? You are trying to predict and be able to test and collect data and say, yes, what I prophesize is working to this extent. If the septic tank was taking 14 days to treat a particular organic waste or organic load, then how can it be what we